Hey everybody, welcome to episode 129 of the Bonehead Podcast, where we talk all things Blood Bowl. And jingle. Welcome back, I'm Ben, and today we're not joined by Blood Tithe Ben. He has gone and got himself a very busy calendar at the moment, so we've dragged in the other two regulars. We've got Ian, Triple Pow, Triplo. Trips, how you doing today?
All good, thank you very much.
And also backed by some shiny lights, we've got Miltonio Banderas. How you doing, Mil?
I'm fantastically festive, thank you.
You do seem it. How close to Christmas do we have to to get before, you bust out the Christmas hat?
A Christmas hat? Wow, I don't think I've ever had one of those.
Oh, right. Well, you're coming round on Saturday, so Amazon. Amazon the Christmas hat.
Nice. If you get me one, I'll wear it on the next pod.
Perfect. I love it. So we don't have BT today. So Milt, you came up with a really cool topic idea. Would you just let us know the little bit of a summary of what we're going to be talking about later in the episode?
Yeah, so obviously we'll have our normal hobby games and news. And in addition to that, we're going to be talking about tiers. Now, we've had a really interesting discussion in the Discord recently, which kind of prompted this. And we're talking about everything tiers, what tiers mean, what they mean to us, what they mean to the game, and where we think they're at the moment.
Yeah, it's a very interesting one. It's a shame Ben couldn't join us because he's got some pretty... oh, man, I can't think of a vampire pun. I don't know. His argument had a bit of bite when it came to vampires. That was poor.
There was a sharp edge to his.
I like it. Anyway, like Milton said, we're going to do the usual news and hobby, and then all about tiers. Okay, so Blood Bowl news. Right, before we kind of go into some of the third-party stuff, Games Workshop had the preview in the middle of the night the other day. There was no Blood Bowl stuff at all. There was some Old World stuff and, I don't know, maybe some Age of Sigmar stuff. There was nothing. I didn't think there was anything that was particularly exciting in that preview. Like, did I miss anything? I don't really remember the preview, to be honest.
It's odd as well because it's the one for the run-up to Christmas, isn't it? So...
I wonder if they're so far behind. I mean, it's the 22nd of November as we're recording this. Legions Imperialis has just gone up for pre-order, sold out on Games Workshop. And then it's going to be a 2-week window. Is that right, Trips?
Yeah, 2 weeks for it.
So that's going to drop the first week of December. So, and I mean, normally when they do a 2-week window, do they still put up pre-order stuff as well?
Well, so they did say it's in the normal 2-week window, and then they did drop a preview last weekend with some Munda and a couple of new 40k codexes. So it does feel like there's both stock that's backed up, and also they're desperately trying to squeeze in a few books and things before Christmas.
Well, the reason I bring this up is for today, for the first time in a long time, I checked the phone with a bit of anxiety and a bit of trepidation because I was like, "Ooh, I have a tingle of their Blood Bowl news," and it could just be, I don't know, pre-baby jitters, I suppose. But I had that thing where I was like, "Whoosh, you know what? Like, I reckon we're gonna get something sometime soon." Obviously not a new team. That would be ridiculous.
No, I don't think it's ridiculous at all. I'm still thinking we'll get a new team this year.
But this year's nearly over. I said that Warhammer. That I don't know if you were in the chat for that one, Milton. But this guy put on the Warhammer the Old World page. He was like, "Right, hear me out. I know it's going to be a Q1 release, but it's only a few weeks away. Just like listen to my reasoning here." And he was like, "Right, there's 1 week left in November. Then it's December. December is crazy." And it's busy and there's family stuff and everything. So December's like a week long. So basically it's 2 weeks. And then there's that miserable week in between Christmas and in January where nothing happens. So we'll skip that week. So basically January is about 2 weeks away. And then January is miserable as well. So that really only counts as a couple of weeks. So if you think about it, February is only 3.5 weeks away.
Nice.
I like the logic of that one. But
the
point is, It's the 22nd of November. We've never had a team drop this late in the year for Christmas. I mean, I appreciate that they could do a thing over Christmas,
we have
but
ogres were
I was
bang
going to
on.
say,
they
weren't
came out.
ogres-
They came out on the first Saturday of December, I think. Like it was like the 6th.
There we go then.
Yeah, but the window for that's gone. Because of the way they do the preview and the pre-order and the pre-order preview.
I think if we were going to see something, there would have been something in the preview, because they do love a preview of a preview of the preview of the preview for the pre-order.
Now, the only thing I can think of that I think you flagged earlier, Milton, was the Dungeon Bowl deathmatch stuff. Because last year that kind of just cropped up and was like, hey, next weekend you can buy this. And we were like, oh, all right then.
If we don't get another team, we won't be having an almanac. There's no way there's enough content without another team to have an almanac. 2, they can go away with, as they proved with the Amazon Norse one.
But there was there was a big star release though, wasn't there?
Yeah.
That,
And
so-
there's
It's not enough because the stars only take 2 pages up.
Yeah.
Like the almanac itself is composed mostly of the spikes.
oh yeah, no, you're right. But last time they had 2 spikes and 8.
A bunch of stars.
Yeah,
Yeah,
a bunch of
yeah,
stars.
yeah. We've had stars, like just no one's cared about them. What about the Nurgle guys and Ludwig and all of them lot?
They were in the almanac.
Were they?
Yeah, their last year's almanac. Drool, Dribble, Puggy, Cindy, Withergrass, Double Draw, and Bile Rot, Vomit Flesh, along with Ripper, Nobbler, and
We still haven't had Grashnak released, have we? Was he in there?
no, he's not been released, but he's been previewed now, hasn't he? Is that right?
He's been previewed, but he's not been released.
Yeah.
The mini's not out. I don't think.
Interesting one. No, but anyway, I had this itching feeling. I was like, we haven't had any Blood Bowl news for a while. I think a team would be too much, but maybe like I'm expecting a new star to randomly drop. That's kind of what I'm expecting.
I like your optimism, but then it's going to be at some point in the next 8 days, as we were recording this, we're going to get an FAQ because it's going to come out in November.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I forgot about the FAQ.
Is that why it's your
Yeah,
senses
That's your
tingling?
tingle. It's going to be an FAQ, which is going to need to be FAQ'd within 24 hours.
Are they gonna refix the unfix of fix for bombers?
Ooh.
Oh, I don't think they are.
Yeah.
I don't think they are. I
don't think it's going back.
think that's done and dusted now.
We had Krakeneye as well, didn't we?
Yeah, Kiroth is a standalone, right? He's not.
Yeah.
He's
Well, there's 2 theories floating around, which is Krakeneye would go with the High Elf release.
that makes sense.
And
Because we had an Ivan Deathshroud released out of the blue, didn't we? And he ended up being part of the Spike release for vampires. Oh dear, I'm going to sneeze.
what's he called? The Minotaur. Oh, I literally just said his name and it's
Grashnak.
gone. Grashnak, that's it. He'd go with the Chaos Dwarf release.
But Grashnak's been.
Has he actually been out? Has his rules been published? I don't think they have they?
Yeah, he was in the Spike for Corn.
Oh, was he?
Yeah.
In which case, then that's gone then.
Have we seen the model for him?
Yeah, we've seen the model. It's just
We've
not
seen
out.
the model, but we have he's nearly as long as a tree man.
Yeah, he's going to say he's getting the Tree Man treatment.
The Croxagore treatment. Oh, I love Grashnak. I love Grash. And we've seen the rules for him, haven't we? He's actually really good.
Oh god, yeah, this is the thing. It gets very confusing, doesn't it? When they leave such a long period of time, and then in that period of time, Brute Fund's done about 5 different versions of the miniature.
He's only done 2 different versions of the Minotaur. And they are both excellent. So yeah, I mean, it sounds like Kiroth is the only standalone star floating around. Which,
that's not enough for an almanac.
It's not enough for an almanac, but if he ends up being the Ivan Deathshroud of the High Elf release, that could be interesting foreshadowing. But the thing is, their Christmas release window, they've really got a nail, I think, and because it's just so important. And Blood Bowl seems to take second fiddle over Christmas, which is perfectly fine. But yeah, I think you're right, Trips. I think we're gonna see the FAQ, and I don't know. I think maybe we will get another Dungeon Bowl deathmatch thing, which would be quite cool. But again, I mean, depends what they put in it.
I mean, I still hold out hope for the team release. Because Christmas is a bit later though in the week, isn't it? It's a Monday.
Monday, yeah.
It's not on a weekend. I'm pretty sure it was on a weekend last year, which would have meant that they wouldn't have been wanting to release on Christmas, which means they could delay it a week. I'm going with that logic. I'm coping hard here.
Oh, I'm well on board with that. Oh,
but
the PTZ camera in the shot, which is terrible. Bad job then. Only set it up today. Yeah, I don't know. I have high hopes for next year, but I am with you guys about the concern about the almanac. Like, I suppose we've had Sewer Bowl.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if Gutter Bowl is in there because that would fill the rules out. And I think, was it this year the almanac? Was a January thing or between Christmas and New Year?
It was.
Yeah, it was a bit later.
It was released the same time as the match play, so it could be possible that the almanac would have vampires, match play, Sewer Bowl, and Kiroth, and this is, I think, why there's potentially a couple of stars floating around. It's a couple of
just a tidy up of basically the articles, and we've had those special articles.
We had the Super Bowl one, and we had the Halloween one.
Do you think they'd include that in a publication though?
If they were looking to fill out pages and get us to buy it, yes.
And also based on the fact that they included the referee rules from White Dwarf. In one of the older almanacs as well.
No, fair comment. No, you're probably right with that. But
I would be okay with it.
Saturday it's coming. Team release.
Well, if they drop the almanac and there's another half dozen stars, that would be wicked.
How many?
I'm not sure who else we're really missing that isn't covered by a team release, like you said.
Are all of the ones in BB3 now?
Asperon Thorn, but we've got to assume that. Well, let's say assume you would expect that him and Kraken Face and then Prince Moranian would all land in the High Elf one. That makes sense as a little trio of elven stars.
Yeah.
And then I'm not sure who else we're really missing. Is Flint Churnblade in yet? The dwarf chainsaw.
No. I was going to say probably we'd get a Chaos Dwarf specific star with the Chaos Dwarf release, right?
Yeah, what was he called? Zarg Madai or something?
I feel like
Thark the Unstoppable. I reckon those two would be good ones to come back for Chaos Dwarves.
I feel like they might get rebranded.
Chaos Dwarves?
No. As in, like, the star player might get a bit of a refresh, maybe a rename or a different look.
Yeah, I am quite supportive of that because they tend to be able to bring them into the lore a bit better, into the current lore a bit better. I was thinking this the other day when we were talking about the Bonehead Championship and everything, and I was like, yeah, Grot Brady coming back, that'd be wicked. And then I was like, oh, Tom Brady's been out of the NFL now for a year. And I'm like, oh no. By the time I bring Grot Brady back, Brady would have been out for an entire year. I mean, he is the most legendary player of all time. And so is Tom Brady. So I feel like it's kind of all right. But
yeah,
you think like how quickly the lore moves on. But Trips, it made me think of like the older stars, like the Jerry Rice and stuff, where they had those in. And now they kind of don't mean a lot to a lot of people.
They're the older Boomer Esiason and
exactly. Oh, I forgot about Boomer. I mean, not as a player, but as a star. Oh God, yeah, I forgot about that. Brickfarth and Grotty though. That was my favourite. That was an ogre snotling combo based on Brett Favre.
Now I've just checked back, and I will now contradict myself about there isn't anything. If we look back to the ogre release, it came out 2 Saturdays before Christmas.
See, this is what This is what I'm saying, because Christmas is a little bit
Serious?
later in the
Yeah.
week.
But it was 2019.
The before times, eh?
Pre-order the 8th of 7th of December, and then was out the week after. So on that frequency, it could still be previewed next weekend. But the fact we haven't heard anything,
Year
would shoot
2019 of the Second Age.
yeah.
Yeah, well, definitely. All right, well, look, we know they've had production issues. Everything's been delayed. Legions Imperialis is coming out now, and it should have been coming out sort of late summer, early, like kind of autumn time. So it is possible that they'll squeeze something in. And I guess a death match would also fill out the almanac a little bit as well.
Yeah. I think it's possible, but if you're hanging on to Blood Bowl Hobby Money before Christmas for something new, you might end up having to spend it on something else.
Well, there's plenty to spend it on.
There's plenty of third-party things to spend it on, and I think that's a great little segue to jump into a couple of them that we've got here on Kickstarter. So first one we're going to look at is a Leprechaun Fantasy Football Team by Agema Minis. They're mean green and the luckiest flings on the pitch. Get your mitts on 16 fantastic fling minis, star players, STLs, and more. So currently this has got 13 days to go, so it's wrapping up Wednesday, December 6th. Oh, dude, December is like there. Internal screaming commences. So before we go, have a proper look at the team. Prices: STL £35 and a real team resin is £70. So those are our 2 price points as we go forth and have a look at the team. So leprechauns, they have the farmer vibes, they have the Amish beards, and they have the top hats. It's kind of, you know, it's kind of the classic thing that you'd expect. So 10 linemen, 2 catchers, 2 hefties, and 2 what I'm going to describe as very Nurgle tree men.
Yeah.
Those sort of twisted faces and the mushrooms and things.
It's the pot belly. It's the pot bellies that kind of...
Yeah.
Interesting.
Okay.
I don't know if the trees...
I've never ordered physical minis off Kickstarter. I've only ever had STLs. So is the 70 including PMP?
No, it never will be on Kickstarter. So it'll probably be about £80 for a team. Okay. Which for a third-party team with 2 big guys, and I mean, geez, if you bought the Games Workshop Halfling team, £35 for the team. How much are the trees these days? 20 quid a pop. That's
I don't think they're that bad. I think it depends whether you go.
I bet you a tree man's worth of money that the tree men are not, that nothing is less than £20. They've got some cool pictures of them painted up, and
no, it is £20 exactly. Boom. On GW.
There you go. Yeah, so I'm surprised you found it on the website. Good job.
Well, I just googled Blood Bowl Tree Man. So.
You didn't have to join the queue and select your country and then click the X button.
The 3D things are back though. Worth mentioning in case anyone was missing them.
Oh, the spinnies.
Yeah.
I heard Peachy complain about that on the painting phase.
Yeah, it was a bit weird that they just like took that all down.
It is a bit weird. Yeah. Well, I guess they just had to get caught up. Right, star players. This is locked at the moment, the stretch goals, but there is a Cindy, there is a Master Chef, there is a Porky Bacon Butty. That's a quality name. A coach, Rumblo Harefoot. Oh, he's riding around on a rabbit. Graf Ubervelt. Groth and Grom. And potentially a star player, Taproot Ironbark. I don't think there's anything in the world I appreciate more than fake star player names. Like, this is the best thing about third parties.
I mean, halfling teams are definitely a team where if you're backing the Kickstarter, you want those stretch goals unlocked because you are going to be using those star players.
Well, we always used to talk about this with halflings, right? Didn't we? Like, if the team does not come with Deep Root, it's an incomplete team. Even if Griff is technically, I think, a better pick these days. I mean, the STLs look good. The resin they use, they're like that. I've got a little gif of them flicking them onto the floor to see if it breaks. It seems like a pretty well done thing. Oh, UK postage, £4. That's not bad.
Not bad.
And is this England? Is this England? I feel like because the postage is £4, and potentially that could be English.
I think it said UK at the top though.
Oh, maybe it did. Maybe it did. Bath, UK. There you go. So,
Okay.
13 days to go. If you want a leprechaun team or another halfling team with a bit of fun, it's pretty good. It's not bad. I will say, when I think of halfling teams, I think of you on trips.
I would prefer my leprechaun team, to be honest, which was a lot of fun printing, painting, and playing with. So
cross lances.
cross lances, yeah.
Does some good stuff. Now we've got another cheeky Kickstarter here with, I think, some really good models, and they've gone all out and painted them. And I think we'll kind of flag this up as we go. So this is Blood Stars Fantasy Football miniature made of metal or resin cast. So 7 days to go. They haven't hit their goal yet, so this will be closing on Wednesday, November 29th. Now this is a Khorne team, and is it STL or is it physical? So STL files, £48 for a coach, 4 Bloodseekers, 4 Beastmen, 7 Marauders, a Blood Demon, and stretch goals with mutations. That is the early bird. And then the main team is £52. So what do you say, £5? Okay, you say €4. And then metal is £65, and can you get a resin £65 as well? And a team 69. Okay, so third party price about the same. This is the coach. Okay, fair enough. So they've gone with a proper Khorne aesthetic. They've got a cool blood demon, and the seekers and the infantry, the seekers and the linemen, the renders are really good. Like if this dropped from Punga or a Realm of Paths as one of their Patreon releases, I think we'd be over the moon, especially because they've got this cool mutation packs as well. The team looks cool. The helmet designs are very cool as well. Like, I really do like that. They look a bit Batman villain, but actually, you know what? This is a very stupid game when you think about things, so it makes a lot of sense. The demons are quite cool, with the weird little creepy heads, and it's got a little hook hand. That's pretty wicked. The beastmen are cool. It's a really well designed team. There's probably two things. I know we kind of talked about this earlier. The first one is the price. £48, £52, did we not say, for STLs for a team that is only 16 models, is significantly higher than the market rate.
Yeah, it's about £20 higher than an expensive Kickstarter.
I mean, it's probably a good time to talk about this, but like a Kickstarter team STL, no stars, just the team. What's your upper limit? What's the upper limit? Say Punga were like, we're going to do a Kickstarter, just the team, STL. What would you be wanting to play? And I'm using Punga as an example because
so Punga will be top end, so you'd expecting really nice models, and you get probably 16 different models. I think 30, 35, if it was more than that.
Yeah, 30 was what I was going to say. And the reality of it is if you sub to their Patreon or whatever, what's that, like £8 a month? And
that's 3 months worth, basically. And in a 3-month period, they'll do the first half of the team, the second half of the team, and the third month will be all the stars for that team. And that's 30 quid. You know, Brute Fun does all of that over 2 months. Realm of Paths are doing a 1 team a month jobby at the moment, but I'm assuming that will come to an end. Agni now do 2 months, and across the 2 months you get a team, you get alt sculpts, you get some stars, and that's kind of like what you expect. And I think you're right, Trips. I think normally you'd be expecting to pay. I've got it in my head as £24, and I don't know why. That's just the amount that I would probably auto trigger. 16. I think we've seen this before. I feel like a few months ago there was an STL team that was like £15, £18.
Yeah, anything less than 20 almost is an auto buy without actually looking at the team.
And then you get to 30 where you're like, still cheaper than a Games Workshop team. You know, it's about the right price. Do you know what? I don't think anyone really begrudges paying £35 for a Blood Bowl team. That's all right. Like,
but you would expect it to be about half the physical cost, not about 2/3 of the physical cost.
That is an interesting one. So that's just a lot of money.
It is. It's a bit much, isn't it?
That's real money. Like, you can go to FANAF and get your resin team shipped to you. for that. So that's definitely one thing. The other thing is that the renders are fantastic. The painting, while significantly better than I can do, I don't think helps show off the details of the model. Which is
I think there's a bit too much blood splatter on it, and I think it's just taken away because when we first looked at it, we're like, oh, and then we started. The renders are beautiful. The painting is not done some of the renders as much justice as you'd want.
This is always a really difficult one when you're trying to showcase miniatures and you've got something which is a new product in particular. You know, if it's something that's been hanging around for a while and people have seen it in different variations, that's one thing. But when it's completely new, and like you said, you know, it's a great paint job. And if I was to come up and play against this on the table, I'd be like, wow, that's fantastic.
Right.
You know, by no way knocking that at all. I just think that perhaps, I don't know whether it's the sort of the color scheme or the style or whatever, it isn't showcasing the miniatures the way the renders are showing them off. And I think that's a bit unfortunate, really.
Yeah, it could even be the backdrop with the sort of watermark behind it is just distracting from it. It's just about those pictures isn't really...
I think it's the angle. I think if you're taking a picture of a model with the base like that, you have to do it at a slightly down-facing angle.
Down-facing.
Yeah, so all of these photos are kind of looking at the crest of their heads, which means they're hiding this detail a bit. Whereas the render, you can maneuver it so that we can see the chest armor. If we look for Seeker 4 in the picture, that's all hidden. And you can't actually
you don't see any of all that detail.
Yeah,
you're quite right.
And I mean, we've done this when we do all of our preview videos and stuff, and we got the Way of Games here to show off. Sometimes just giving them a prime or an ink wash or something just to show out the detail, it is a bit better, and because it shows the detail off. And when it comes to this kind of stuff, they've done some really, I mean, look at the blending on the horns. Like, the painting is absolutely fantastic.
Oh yeah.
And as a representation of how this team can look when it's finished, is brilliant. But wargaming is never about what you are actually buying. Wargaming, no matter what you're buying, is about you're buying opportunity. Oh, I picked up a cool rule set because I like the opportunity that I might play this. You're not going to play it. Everybody out there who's just spent £120 backing Legions Imperialis, one game, that's all you're going to get. But like, you've bought the opportunity to play that game. You buy a team, you buy the opportunity to paint it, and then you stick it on a base and you prime it, and it goes in the cupboard, and then you buy the next one. So I think selling the opportunity here might have been a little bit of a better steer.
But to be fair to them, what they've done is they've gone the Games Workshop angle, haven't they? Because I mean, that's what Games Workshop does to sell its products, and like, I can 100% completely appreciate that. So, like, you know, fair play for, like, you know, going to that degree, because we do get a lot of stuff where it's just like, here's just stuff, and like, doesn't really, you know, doesn't showcase anything. So at least there is some degree of example. At least the renders are by the side, because if the renders weren't there with it, I think I have struggled to kind of understand the concept of what they were trying to sell.
And I think without the printed models, you would have the kind of the same. I think you're right.
Yeah,
I think you are right. It's an interesting one. I actually really love the sculpts, and at £30 or £35 with a couple of stars, I would absolutely be snapping this up. But this is the price of 2 other STL teams, and it's.
Yeah, I think when we first looked at it, it's like the price for the STLs is like buying a merchant license for another Kickstarter.
Yeah.
If you're at the top end price for your low end, then you're out a little bit.
Yeah, I think that's pretty fair. It's cool though. I do like it. But I believe that is everything for news. No Blood Bowl 3 announcements or anything like that at the moment, is there?
We just had some minor. We had a reasonably big patch a couple of weeks ago, which has worked quite well. The Dark Elf Star has been readjusted for his agility from 2+ back to 3+.
I called it.
Yeah. Somewhere along the line, I think the graphics have been tidied up a bit, because it was good. Milton and I had a good game. We'll talk about it in a bit. And I think there's maintenance tomorrow, so hopefully there might be correcting some errors and sorting out some more stuff.
Is
I
it
hope
on the
so.
Switch yet?
No.
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 That's a
I
shame.
don't know. Like, there's one big thing that me and Sharon were talking about in the Discord, and I just don't know why they did it. The knockout, like before, it was consistent with like the casualty and everything. When you got the wheel to use your apothecary or to just continue with the knockout, and you get the bell at the top. But for some reason, just for knockouts, they switched it round, and now it says do nothing or the apothecary's at the top. And it was like, why? It's so confusing. I'm hoping tomorrow they fix that.
It is amazing how they managed to break things that were working
Yeah.
while putting other things in. Please don't break the things that actually we like and we've learned to use.
That is a Blood Bowl staple, isn't it?
Yeah, there was a sort of a question in the Discord earlier, sort of saying like, have they kind of fixed the game yet? Is it sort of smooth or whatever? And I said, well, it's still a long way off the truth. But they are getting there bit by bit, and it doesn't really take away from the fact that it's still quite fun. I mean, we had a good time.
It is a lot of fun.
Yeah, and so yeah, I mean, if you're around and playing, me and Trips are going to be playing in the Bonehead ladder on every other Wednesday. So next Wednesday, if you want to come and play with us, that'd be cool. That's on PC. So until we get the cross-platform thing go through, which
the holy grail of gaming, isn't it?
They've not released it on the Switch yet, so I don't really.
Oh, I was only asking because I was kind of hoping that when baby time comes, I can just jam games in on the Switch.
Oh, you got Steam Deck though, haven't you?
Yeah, but I don't know.
No.
Yeah, I don't know.
Don't fancy it on the Steam Deck. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it coming out on the Switch too. I'll probably grab.
There's just something about a console that just gels really, really well. It's really interesting because Tiff's been playing Hogwarts Legacy. She's bought it for the Switch because she's just like, oh yeah, she's loving it. It's brilliant. She was like, the graphics they're not as good as the Steam Deck, but she was like, but it's comfortable. She was like, can't really explain it. Like, the controls are absolutely fine on the Steam Deck. I'm used to them. I've completed the game on the Steam Deck, but there is just something about the Switch that is just more comfortable. And I'm like, this is really interesting. And that's kind of maybe go, I wonder if Blood Bowl 3 is going to come out on the Switch.
It will eventually.
Yeah.
When the next consoles come out.
Not this side of Christmas.
Yeah, when Games Workshop release the next edition of Blood Bowl.
Yeah.
Anyway, before we wrap up and move on to hobby, just want to say a massive thank you out there to everybody who supports us by joining the Discord, by getting some bits from the shop, liking, subscribing, and doing all the stuff. It's really awesome. Sorry it's been quiet the last few months. If I'm honest, it's probably likely to be quiet for the next few months as well, but such is life. But a massive thank you to everyone who helps anyway. We've got some really good plans. We've got a big Saturday coming up where we're going to get together and have our I can't remember what we were going to do originally. I think we were going to film a four play Dungeon Bowl League, and it's turned into our AGM now for the podcast, which is going to be awesome. So
yeah,
I'll show a picture of the new studio in a minute, and the guys are going to come around and we're going to have a good powwow, talk about tournaments and series and how we put it together next year in an organized and calm way, and really do some cool stuff. So I'm very, very, very excited. However, let's talk about hobby and games. Okay, so I'm going to jump straight in here with hobby, and I've been working on the studio, so there's a ton going on in the Greenman household, and it's taken forever, but the last few days I've managed to sneak out a little bit of time and finish some more of the studio. So if you can see this image here, I've got the new TV in today. We've got 3 slots at the top for display stuff. There's actually lights on those as well, but I'm going to get Trips to play with them on Saturday when he comes around. Haven't done the ceiling still. That's just never going to happen. Put some brickwork up on the back, but we've got all the storage. We've got the back desk. We've got the 6x4 table here. I think you can just see one of the PTZ cams on the slidey camera bit over the top. I've built one. I've got to take it apart and drop it because I didn't consider the ceiling. It's in the rafters, and the rafters are bad because that's where the spiders live. So that's all going to be encased. So I've got to drop the thing down a bit. So that's fine because I only did one. But yeah, I've been having a good play, and one of the biggest things is how warm it's going to be. It's not been massively cold recently. I think it got down to 7 the other day, and Tiff came out while I did the wall material here today, and she was like, Jesus, it's hot in here. I was like, yes. And you guys coming around on Saturday is also going to be a good test as well. But I'm confidently saying we're nearly there with the studio now, which is fantastic, and I am absolutely psyched.
Well, considering you have literally built that from the ground up, and the ground needed work before
From
it could
below the ground.
that is an pretty awesome job. And for those who haven't been part of the journey and seen the way, it feels like it is transformed from a shed to a studio now. And yeah, I can see many a happy hour of madness being spent in there.
It's yeah, it was much bigger an undertaking than I considered. Obviously, I haven't sorted out the lighting, I haven't sorted out any of that, but I don't really care about that right now.
It's like a continual job of optimization. That'll be the 2024 job of going, well, if I do this and I do that and I do that.
The real star of the show is this little guy here, which is your plug. That plug that, since you lent it to me for the tournament that time, has travelled with me and has provided power, I think, to every room of my house, and now is a fixture in the studio. But really boring thing. I've kind of, like you said, tried to optimize the storage. So we've got double Kallax unit at the back, where we can put all the that's going to be storage for stuff. So I figured that, well, this is the funny thing. The IKEA, like the Kallax slidey box things, right? The cheapest ones you can get £4 or £5.
Yeah.
And it's just ridiculous. If you want to get nice ones, they're like £18 because I have to go buy some more for the lounge. So I was like, well, that seems stupid. So I jumped on eBay and got cardboard boxes that are 12 foot by 12, 12 inches by 12 inches by 5 inches. And I was like, well, that will do fine. Yeah, exactly. And it was like £10 for 25. I was like, that will do much better, 50p a box. So I've got, I think, 16 of these size boxes. In the bottom one here, there is all of my Blood Bowl pictures, with the exception of one standard one that's going to go here tomorrow during a call so I can play around with the setup. All the Blood Bowl pictures are there, which means these are all blank for more Blood Bowl pictures and for bigger projects. And then I don't think you can quite see, but in here, I've got a whole bunch of 6 inch by 6 inch by 6 inch boxes. So I go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 in each of those cubes. And I ordered 24 of those, but I can max them out because I figured actually when we're done with the season of the team, we don't need it out, right? So actually, bung it in a box and file it.
Bung it in the box, stick a label on it, and we'll find it when we need it.
Yeah, we've got room for 64 teams there, which I think will probably do us for a little while. So
that'll keep us till about June.
Yeah, well, with this release schedule, I think we'll be okay. And then we've got going to have 3 Kallax display segments here. Like I said, we've got some LED lights to uplight it, and that'll be enough for plenty of teams on display, which would be cool. We've got the big old TV, brand new addition to the family today, that fits in there nicely. I bought the biggest one that would fit in the Kallax unit, so then we can have whatever we want on the back there. And this is I think the most fun bit. Milton had some pretty, I'm going to say egregious ideas of what we could decorate the walls with, but we get to do stuff here, which is like shelves and foam fingers. And what was your suggestion today, Milton?
Marble busts.
I believe the phrase was, it should be like Osborne House, but with less graphic statues.
Yeah. See what I used. You said who's the company? Is it Torchlight or
Agni?
Agni make busts.
They'll take like some of their star players they release and of like the previous month or this month, and they just make busts of their torso upwards. It's really clever. So actually, we could do something like that. I'm still set on having like the balls or something here, and I've got a Bonehead Podcast foam finger on the way, a sample. We've got that. So I don't know. We've got plenty of wall space. And I need to continue sort of using this awful stick-on brickwork, but actually, it's made it look a lot better.
Works really well. And it is the point where if anyone has any brilliant ideas of what to do comment or stick it in. We will absolutely look, because we've never got to build a studio before, so no idea how it should work.
No, I'm just excited that we've got somewhere to put all the cameras. God, that's just an absolute game changer. So yes, we're nearly there. We've got the lads coming around on Saturday, so we're going to talk about strategy for the podcast, but also ways to like use the studio. And then we'll undoubtedly put some stuff in the Discord or on the channel, like a video or something, so that we can be like, hey, this is where we're at. What do you want to see? In fact, I already started that the other week, because with the Patreons anyway, I put a post out saying we've got our AGM coming up. What do you want? What do you want us to do more of, less of? Any suggestions? People were like, Bonehead Championship, bring it back. I was like, okay, that's what I want to do. And having this space should make it so much easier to film. I mean, you've both been so generous with your time, but coming over, helping me set up all the cameras, all the lighting, checking the audio doesn't work, rechecking the audio doesn't work again and again and again. It's just, we must spend about 45 minutes to an hour getting started. And then I have to spend 45 minutes to an hour afterwards closing it all down. So it takes 2 hours to play a Blood Bowl game. It takes 4 hours. Yeah. It takes 4 hours to film. Actually, this has got a lot of potential. We might even be able to get 2 games in, or even not. It's just less time, easier to pop in, especially with Ben being Mr. Self-Employed now as well. You'd be like, so Ben, Thursday afternoon, what are you doing? Want to come and film a game?
Long lunches, here we come.
Yeah, exactly. So yes, that's my little bit of hobby. I actually do have some other stuff to talk about, but I will pass the baton on to you guys. Been working on anything fun?
I've done a little bit. I started painting the ogre baby. That was fun. Oh god, I love those minis. The Bonehead Bowl minis. Really good fun that Brute done. I wanted to finish him off, and I haven't, but I will if I get some time this week, and start on the bigger ogre. But I mean, it's hobby in the sense that I bought things.
Yes, you did for the first
hobby
time.
Hobby is allowed this buying thing.
Yeah, what was it we normally say? Buying, building.
I've been very restrained this year on bringing in new stuff. I've been trying to work through the backlog rather than put more in the pile.
And you've done a good job, so you have to put stuff in the pile now.
Yeah, I had so much fun with the Snotlings at Bonehead Bowl, and I just completely saw their value in the games that I played. And I love the kits. Ian very kindly gave me some Snotlings so that I could build them for the tournament. And I was looking at your video about the tournament rosters for Snotlings, and there's a nice little Crack and Crumbleberry Snotling one.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I happened to stroll into Games Workshop for some paints the other day, and the Blood Bowl stuff is to the left of the paint rack. And as I turned, there was a Snotling team just in my eye line, which promptly left the shelf and entered.
You were defenseless.
Yeah, so I bought that.
You said you got a couple of trolls as well. Which trolls did you go with?
I bought some of the Fellwater Troggoths.
Oh, okay. The old river troll.
They've been on my wish list for a long time, but they're not part of. Is that the Brute Fun one?
Yeah, I was going to say he's just dropped a troll for his Black Orc team. No,
that is such a good troll
for his standard Orc team.
But I want to go for like a swampy, marshy theme Snotling team, and I've got like sort of a guide I want to follow for the basing. Lost track.
Oh no, you've had a switcheroo. That's okay. You carry on, Milt.
No, I was looking to do like a swamp theme for them and everything, and I thought that the Fellwater Troggoths kind of fit that a little bit better. And so yeah, I ordered some of those as well, and I'm looking forward to putting them together and styling them alongside alongside the two-headed ogre, Crack and Crumbleberry. That's basically been my hobby in terms of like hobby. And then we've had games. We played Blood Bowl 3, didn't we, Trips?
We did. There's nothing like going, we'll play in the Bonehead ladder. You're there excitingly looking at who you're going to be playing and what it is. And you're like, that looks like a not Dark Elf team. Not Dark Elves. Oh, no, it's Milton.
Well,
I think it was the exact phrase.
I didn't check the chat to see whether or not you're in a game or whatever. I just loaded BB3 up and clicked connect, not thinking about it. I was like, oh, okay, it's Trips. Cool. Right, let's do this. It was a good game. It was really fun. I mean, there's a lot of...
Well, Lizards WA in the snow.
Lizards are such a hard matchup. I really struggle against...
You were running Lizard strips.
I'm running Lizards. Milt
was running OWA.
It doesn't matter what I'm playing. I really struggle against Lizards. Lizards are such a great team, and I think it's because of my play style, because I'm so used to playing sort of bashy or whatever. Lizards can hold against that, and they've still got the agility to get around you. And then I kind of just tumble when I've got to kind of deal with the skinks. But
skinks are so good.
I think, what was it like?
Finished 2-1. I scored a turn 15 touchdown.
Yeah,
you got a bit unlucky in, I think, turn 15. You failed.
It was double skulls, wasn't it?
Double skulls.
No rerolls left. So it was good fun though. It was good fun, and I played 3 ladder games at the weekend with my orcs. And all 3 of them were against other orc teams, and they were all basically mirror matches because everybody's gone and done the same thing. And the thing is, it's like when you're progressing an orc team through the ladder, you're going block on the big uns, and then you're probably picking up some guard or some mighty blow.
Block, guard, mighty blow.
Yeah, and so like they were all mirror teams, and I really struggle to play against orcs with orcs. It's a really
interesting.
I don't know what the sort of mental block is for me, like with how to deal with it. And so those were my first 2 losses in the ladder since I started the team. Sorry, that's not quite accurate. I lost my first 2 games with the team, but those are
probably.
yeah. But those are the 2 losses that I've had since, and it was really difficult. I think by the 3rd game, I'd kind of come to terms with it, and I managed to pull it round. But it does feel like when you're playing against a bashy team and the other team gets a KO or a Kaz,
it snowballs.
It snowballs so quickly, and you find it very difficult to sort of counter that. What was really interesting though was like because both those teams brought trolls, they had the slight strength advantage to me because I don't run a troll. I do now, because I got really upset about it and bought a troll off the back of it. Which is interesting because I've never run a troll with orcs. I've always said no to the troll. I just feel like it's always been like a huge risk. But again, and this is a discussion that's come up quite a lot about Blood Bowl 3. Ladder is a completely different format to League and tournament play.
Right, it's also a different format to Blood Bowl as well because there's only a limited pool of teams.
Yeah, exactly. And
which I love. It's got its own sub-meta of misery, which is something only online games can achieve.
I think I didn't test it, but I believe based on the chat on the Discord that they've effectively got rid of random skills. They've hiked the price of random skills to the same cost as picking for the ladder.
Which I think for an eternal format is a reasonable thing to do.
Sense. Yeah, because I think basically what's happening is people just random don't get what they want, re-roll the team, and like you've got nothing to lose, and then you're just like, oh, I'll just play again. I'll just start at the bottom and I'll keep feeding my way up.
What will come after that will potentially be people saving and then taking the random stat ups as a first gate, and then you're going to start playing against movement 7. Strength 4 orc blitzers instead, which do you know what I'm there for, because I think that's a really interesting mini meta, but it it can be pretty miserable. It's like playing your very first game of Magic the Gathering modern format. You're just like, oh, I love Magic, and then someone's just like, I play this card, this card, this card. You activate my trap card, and you lose, and you're like, what are you doing? How have you got this movement 8 piece, like with this strength 4, edge 2+ blitzer? Oh,
No, it's like, where did it come from? Yeah, no, it's
Milton. Close your eyes and imagine an edge 2+ orc blitzer.
Ooh.
There you go.
Ooh.
Right?
With dodge.
Yeah.
Oh, dodge is easy once you got edge 2+.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've got to say, having played Milton in the snow, the thing that scared me the most, I was like, oh, he won't play like Ben, and he's just rushing around, and I'm like, oh my goodness, he's like, go for a rush, go for a rush,
Hang on.
go for a rush.
If he was rushing, he was playing like me. If he was taking 3+ dodges into the open, that was Ben. That was Blood Tithe.
Bit of both.
Yeah.
Channeling the Ben.
One of us.
Well, the thing is, it's like I literally because I play orcs and I know how to play orcs and I know how to play orcs tactically, and I'd say I'm quite serious about playing my orcs. But when I come to play a team that I'm not familiar with, and that was maybe my 4th game with OWA, I tend to take considerably more risk.
You've got to see what happens. You've got to push the envelope.
Yeah, exactly. So like I think that was just a case of me just going, oh, what's the worst that happens? I don't care about these guys.
Are you interested in an OWA team on the pitch, Mill?
Oh yeah. Since like picking them up, I actually see that they're quite interesting. It's the Troll Slayer.
I believe I have a couple of Ugni OWA teams printed in stock. So when you come round on Saturday, you'll have to come up and check out the printing room and maybe pick yourself up. You get a choice of moustache or no moustache, because it is a great team, and I am also going to be brewing one up, or getting you to paint it for the Bonehead Championship.
All right, give it to me. I'll paint it.
Everybody wins. Everybody wins.
All right, I'll do that, and then I'll come over and I'll play it.
Yeah, and then I'll keep it for 6 months and then put it in a cupboard and. Actually, it will be. I can show you. It will be. It will
just
be
in that box there.
It'll be there. Yeah. So that's good. I won't lose it this time.
No. and the OWA team, it's definitely the Troll Slayer is an absolute star on that.
He's so good. Yeah. I mean, I don't even care. I'll take 2 die up hills with him.
You were running him around like a mad idiot. I think at one point I had 4 skinks trying to take him out, and then I'm not a big fan of fouling, but if a Troll Slayer goes on the ground, I have to get the foul.
That was it. Like every opportunity Trips had to foul the Troll Slayer, he was like,
well, Trips has played a ton of OWA, so
yeah, I was like, whatever happens, the Troll Slayer's going down, because then I can do what I want to do rather than have him wreck my.
You got to remember, the Troll Slayer, while being a brilliant offensive piece, is not going to win the game. But taking out the Troll Slayer is just going to destroy your opponent's spirit, and that's what Trips was doing at that point. So nothing to do with the Troll Slayer being able to win the game. It's just a case of like, I removed the fun part of your team. Now you do's.
You know what? They're not lost on me though, because I played against Rob at Sambowl, and he brought OWA, and he absolutely crushed me. But he was running Deep Root and Zug, and he had I can't remember whether he had the OWA tree alongside it or whether it was the Ogre, along with a mixture. And the thing is you get quite a lot of variety, not necessarily quite a lot of cost. The only thing that throws me about the team is the fact that the dwarfs don't have block.
Yeah.
That's just super weird for me.
Yeah.
And I almost always forget it. And I'm like, great, these guys can just go in and block. And then I get why they don't have it, but it just throws me every time. But I think there's an enormous amount of potential to OWA, and you don't see them very often. Or maybe not.
They
not
are
as often
one of
as
the least popular teams kicking around.
Yeah. I think they deserve more credit than they. I think they've had a bit of a bump as well, haven't they? From
no. But what?
Do you think they had a drop since?
Yeah, they're a fun league team as well, because there are 75 different ways to evolve them depending on the skills and the detail, because you've got a runner, you've got a couple of blitzers, you've got the thrower, and then of course you're going to get the random skills where your SPPs don't quite land where you want them to land. They'll never land or
The
block or
8th most winningest team in Blood Bowl 2020 tournaments. Not to spoil what we're going to be talking about later. They've only played 2,600 games compared to Underworld at 7,000 or Skaven at 9,800. Orcs 12,000 games. So, they've played less games than High Elves. And only a little bit more, literally 160 more than Slan. That's really interesting.
That's quite low.
But I think it's because the Games Workshop version of OWA is
it's quite hard to get into, isn't it? And there's a long period of time where you didn't have the box.
Yeah.
So you'd have to buy so many pieces for it.
It's potentially the hardest team to get into other than Renegades, but Renegades is just like madness fun. And they've done a really good job, I think, building the OWA team, selecting the pieces. You're bang on the money. The Brawler Dwarves, I think that would be fine if all Dwarves had Brawler. But it's kind of just like one of these things is not like the other. One of these things is just plain worse. And I think they've got Loner as well, haven't they? And it's not Loner 4+, it's Loner 3.5+ or something really egregious.
Yeah, it's weird, isn't it? But I mean, they're great. They're great. And listen, if you want to come and play me, probably Wednesday night, 8 o'clock UK time, come and join us.
I like that.
Please do, because then I can play someone else.
Get one of the Bonehead crew. Wicked. Trips, how about you? Building, buying, printing, playing?
So other than playing Milton, I've not played a lot. We didn't have club this week.
No, we've got Winter Flu going around. So both
Winter
the key
Flu
holders.
going around. So I've been painting some spaceship for my 5 parsecs, which is good fun.
It's the chunky one, isn't it?
Big, nice and chunky 3D printed spaceship. And the nice thing about painting a spaceship is you can do it pretty quickly because it is meant to look like it's been bashed around a bit. So that's been quite good fun. And painting those minis as well. Finished off painting my Khorne team that I've been using in League and managed to get my High Elves into their display box, which was very nice to get my 9th box filled, which gave me used to get some more boxes. And as soon as I get some more boxes, that frees up some space. So my vampire team is halfway through being assembled.
Ooh. Games Workshop Vampires?
Yes.
Another team we've got for you, Milton, here waiting.
The pile never disappears, does it? It's just a myth.
No. And I think if the pile disappeared, then you'd either hidden it well or been in a coma for 6 months.
Yeah.
The pile does grow. In fact, I found a little bit of time last night to do a bit of nothing, which is wonderful. So it's been very busy recently, which is fantastic, and I managed to get a bit of hobby on the go with good reason. So Weir Games have got their Kickstarter going live in a couple of days. So by the time you listen to this, the review video will be out. And dude, their Lizardman team is wicked. Weir Games, all their Kickstarters have been really, really well done. These are actually 3D printed. I don't know if we got early 3D prints and they're going to cast the rest of them, but I mean, there's a couple of tiny bits of, I was going to say flash, but supports, but these are absolutely gorgeous models. So that's the Croxagore. This is one of the Saurii. They've done a nice job of going for a style that's different than Games Workshop's while still being pretty menacing. In fact, it kind of reminds me of the old 5th edition lizards that came in the box for Warhammer.
Yes.
Bretonnians and
they're more like cone-shaped heads, as it were. Yeah.
And what's really nice on those is the tail's still there in detail, but it's going to be harder to hook the tail up with everything else. Which
I was just about to say, the profile of that Crocs is fantastic, because we've seen some lovely Crocses, but quite frankly, when you put them down on the table, they just batter like all the minis around them.
Yeah.
With the exception of that slight overhang with the tail, I think that's great.
Yeah, you got it. It's also because of the it's on an axis, so it's kind of like here is him next to a model. I just turn him ever so slightly, so it's actually fine. And the skinks are very cool. The only one I've just primed a few of them so I can show them off on the review video. But the chameleons are just awesome. But again, I think it's just a really, 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 really nice team. And if we end up running Lizards in the Bonehead Championship, it will be this team. Because actually the Brute Fun team's awesome. Ugly do a good team. The Games Workshop one is very good too. But this team is wicked. Really, really, really big fan of that. And I showed off the troll. So I mean, Chaos Black is a spray. Despite being the price of a team, is actually phenomenal. So there's a couple of painting videos I wanted to try out. One of them is this cool dry brushing method for doing black armor for a Space Marine, and I was like, oh, you know what, we'll try it out on the Broody Orc. So I got my Broody Troll. It's the first part of this team, but I mean the second part will be out soon, and a couple of the Black Orcs, Biggins, who are Biggins, let's put it that way. And you got some funky Blitzers and some cool Goblins too. I've realised that this black paint is just right. Okay, so priming it white, great for detail. Priming it black, not great for detail. But it's a very cool team. I was planning on doing these as the Green Destroyers, but I thought actually these are lovely models. I want to try dry brushing using this other method. So what better way could it be for doing it? I also got the Walter Krakenberg from Ugly because I printed off loads of them and they're in my drawer. And I was like, oh, I want to kind of print this one up and see what it's all about, which I thought was quite a cool little alternate scheme as well. And so yeah, last night Tiff was playing Hogwarts Legacy, we were watching Gilmore Girls, and I based and primed these guys, and I'm hoping in the next few days with some boring meetings I can just chuck on a bit of dry brushing when I'm not being distracted by playing in the shed. But I'm not sure there's gonna be much else I can do until I've got the roof on, because then I can put the wood paneling down the sides and everything. But hey, it's been a good week. I feel like we're finally getting somewhere now.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
Although that means that the baby will turn up. I said this earlier to my mum, actually, because I got the TV delivered there because I knew she'd be in. And I was kind of like, yeah, studio's going to be done just in time for me to not be able to use it. But, hey, it'll all be fine. So yeah, that's everything from me, and I think that's plenty for now. You guys, anything else you want to touch on? All right. So if Ben was here, he'd say, I've played in lots of tournaments recently. And we would have said, that's interesting. What were the formats? And he would have said, well, in this tournament, it's tier 59. In this tournament, they're tier 2. And the package was this. And I went with tier 17 Alpha Bravo Charlie, which gave me 2 skills on a Tuesday as long as I'm wearing green. Which kind of inspired Milton to think, how many tiers does there need to be? So we are going to take a quick break and we'll be right back to talk about tiers in Blood Bowl. Okay, and we're back. So, the preamble wasn't entirely accurate. Basically, we were talking about things we wanted to touch on when we have our AGM, and one of them was podcast ideas. And Milton put in tiers. And then over the last week, it sounds like that's fleshed out a bit. So would you give us a little bit of a rundown of what the question was, or just like, what's the deal with tiers?
Yeah, I mean, tiers is a really interesting one, and we've touched on it, I think, to some degree across the years. Here and there, but never in any great depth. It's always kind of been a passing comment, when an FAQs happened, or when the new rule set came out and everything. And I think the dust is starting to kind of settle on that. We've got most of the teams out now. We've had a lot of tournaments, a lot of games have been played. We've started to get some data, as you kind of showing earlier. And this conversation cropped up in the Discord around tiers. Now, it kind of came from a place of a new player starting in the game, getting the rule book and looking through it and seeing the Games Workshop tiers that are assigned to the teams, and kind of wondering what that means. Now, the rule book does give a sort of a brief description around it, sort of stating that, it's a sort of a guide, an estimate as to where the tiers are. But
a pirate's code, if you will.
Yeah, but in a way that's almost semi-contradictory, because when they released the matched play guide, they insisted that the tiers were therefore the tiers for a tournament and how you should play, right? So we kind of want to go on, well, what does a tier, what do the tiers actually mean? And it was a really great discussion, and I'm loving all of these kind of these questions, these sort of rules questions, or these conversations and dialogue that we're getting pop up on the Discord now, and the community kind of having these conversations, because I think they get some really interesting answers. But honestly, I don't know. I mean, there's no concise answer to it, and as a new player, I think it's really quite confusing, but at the same time, it's quite good. So I think there's some pros and some cons to the Games Workshop tiering, and it kind of led into a question for us as to how we structure our tournaments and how we're going to handle the tiering and how we feel about it. And I thought it would be great to discuss this on the pod, because there's a lot of questions around this. And I think the first and foremost I kind of came up with as a counter argument, it's like, what has Games Workshop actually based their tiers on? Because,
well, I can jump in here. I think they actually do cover this in the rulebook a little bit. I may be wrong, but I feel like they describe the teams as saying tier 1's the best, they start good. Tier 2 takes stuff to make them good, and tier 3 is just
stunties.
Not going to win a lot. And I think that's literally like it. I think that's all they do.
And that's great, and that does, and like the massive pro to that is obviously that as a new player, you're looking at that and you're going, okay, well, I'm new, and therefore maybe I should look at like a tier 1 team because it might be a bit of an easier ride. Now, that being said, I feel like most hobbyists kind of come into the hobby because they like a particular aesthetic more than they're worried about the rules. And so I kind of had this like burning question. I was like, do you feel that like the tiering would affect your purchase choice or your like buy-in to the game? Because if you're exposed to the rules first, let's say you've not bought the box set, let's say you've not bought the starter set, because I think that's a bit different, because you end up with two.
Yeah.
Well, in fact, that's kind of weird, because you end up with two tier 2 teams by buying the box set. So you're in the middle with what you get. But let's say you've got the rule book, or you've been introduced to the rule book, somebody's lent you the rule book, and you're kind of flicking through and going, oh, what kind of teams do I like? For me personally, like it's entirely like an aesthetic choice, but that's because I came from fantasy wargaming and everything, and I've played 40k, I've played AOS, I've played Warhammer, I've played other games, and I know what I like in terms of my fantasy genre, what kind of things I would like to pick up more than the rules. And I think the more that I've played, other teams have appealed to want to try their rule set out, but not necessarily be so bothered about the aesthetic of the team and the way that it plays or whatever, because I'm coming from it from a tabletop perspective. I don't know how that impacted with you guys when you started with the game, whether or not the tiering would have made a difference to the way that you bought into it.
It's a brilliant question, because I came from a time where Blood Bowl was a league game. We used to play Blood Bowl in leagues. We'd have several leagues on the go, and tier in league meant absolutely nothing to anybody ever. And it just doesn't, it's just not a thing in league. Now, there are some leagues out there that give bonuses to tier 2 or tier 3 teams joining a league, and I think that's excellent, because I'll come back to why in a second. But for me, you took goblins because you wanted to see your underdogs win. Think about if you're an NFL fan, think about the Cleveland Browns in the last 5 years. Not the last year, because that's when their version of Hackflem came out. But before then, it was kind of like, oh, we'll take this team, they're a challenge. And I think Underworld in the olden time were the peak example of this. But like, this team is rubbish. It is just a worse version of Skaven. And it was a real challenge. So I remember towards the end of the last edition taking Underworld, because I was like, right, well, I know how to win with Skaven, and now I want to try something different. Try a new challenge, and that was, I think, what it always was. Most players would come in, and back in those days, they'd pick up humans or orcs, which were both tier 1 teams back in those days, and that's where they would start. And it would either be downhill from there, because they would play those 2 starter teams and go, ooh, I like throwing the ball, That's pretty cool. My catcher's nice and fast. Ooh, what's faster? Ooh, elves are faster. Skaven are faster. Wicked. Or, ooh, I like smashing stuff. I like crumping with orcs. What's more crumpy than orcs? Oh, I can do this. And you went kind of, you went one of two ways. And then once you'd done that next objective, like once you completed the next campaign, then you kind of did something else. You were like, oh, I played Dash, now I'm going to go play Bash. Or, oh, actually, you know what? I won the last league. I should probably play Halflings this league and give somebody else a chance. And that was how it always used to be. Like from an organic, having a league and running it, that's how it works. If you joined the league, you'd do it that way, or you join the league and you literally look at the models and go, oh yeah, they look cool. I play Skaven in Warhammer Fantasy. I play High Elves in Warhammer Fantasy. How do I get a High Elf team? And you run your first league. But that's like Blood Bowl at its purest point was league, and tiers meant nothing. And I don't think, even in the old CRP, I don't think tiers were on there. And tiers were only ever a thing for tournaments. And it was really interesting when they introduced them to the Games Workshop rules, like you say, Milton. But all I've seen tiers achieve, and this is what I think they are brilliant for as a whole, the Games Workshop tier system, I think, is brilliant because you've got that kind of quick reference to a case of like, and their actual description is really good here, which is tier 1 is occupied by the strongest and most forgiving of teams, those that can easily recover from mistakes. Tier 2 is they're all highly competitive, but often a small mistake can prove costly. And then tier 3, good luck. And I think that's a really great signpost. You got, red, amber, green. If you're starting, choose a tier 1 team. If you want a bit more of a challenge, choose a 2, and then if you really want a challenge, choose tier 3. And I think for the core game, not tournament, that's really good.
What?
You're right.
While you're trying to breathe there, Ben, it's interesting because I came back to Blood Bowl in a tournament fashion. So I found the tiering really useful to give you a good idea of, for someone coming back to the game, of actually where are the teams, who are the good teams, right? The good teams will be in tier 1. The teams that I'm going to have fun with, but I'm never going to win with, particularly coming back to it, are in tier 3. So it straight away gave me a sort of guide of where to look in detail. But coming back to it in a tournament sense gives you a very different look, because the tiering 9 times out of 10, or probably 99 times out of 100, is relating to a different bit of the rules pack that you're looking in. So therefore you're looking at actually not playing a vanilla tier 1 team from 1,000 gold or 1 million gold, sorry. You're playing with a skill package and detail. So you're straight into that development bit, and that tiering makes a big difference then for how far you can advance the team.
So I think, and this is where, and I agree with everything, and I think what you've got up there on the screen at the moment with what comes from the rule book is great for kind of giving you an overview of what the teams do. But here is where I have a sort of a little bit of an issue with it, I'd say. And I think it's a strange one. We know that well, kind of go back to the question that I asked originally, which is, how does Games Workshop make that decision? Because, and I think one of the prime examples here is Orcs and Humans. As you said earlier, they were tier 1 teams in 2016, and they've always been considered good teams. They're consistent. I would say they're quite forgiving teams. I'd say they're relatively strong teams. Now, the rulebook came out and they were T1, and then the FAQ came out and they got dropped down to T2. And I wondered how Games Workshop had kind of come to that decision and conclusion. Now, we know that a lot of people have kind of discussed that. There's tournaments out there that bump them back up into tier 1. Some of them leave them at tier 2. Some of them kind of leave them in a sort of a place in between. And so, of course, I know that this doesn't apply to the league play, but how do you kind of determine if you've got, as a new player, well, I've come in, I've got the rule book, it says, oh, this is occupied by the strongest and most forgiving teams, and I'm looking at Orcs and Humans and thinking they look cool, and then my friend goes around and goes, "Oh yeah, they're not tier 1 anymore. They're tier 2." And then you're thinking, oh, maybe they're not quite as good as I thought they were, or maybe I'll play lizards now.
Well, the question is, what is the purpose, or what's the benefit of even putting things in tiers? You've got the classification, which is excellent for someone coming in vanilla, but I've always thought that the not the purpose, yeah, the purpose of the tiers, and I think this lines up with the Games Workshop and Orc, Human and Orc thing from Games Workshop. Is I always assumed that tier 2 packages in and tier 3 packages in tournaments aren't there for balance, they're there for incentive. Like, you can be like, well, I can take a Skaven team and I get 4 skills, or I can take a Chaos team and I get 7. Oh, that's interesting. I can do more with that team then. And I feel like that's always been an incentive. And I think the Games Workshop Orcs Human thing, I don't think it was a knee-jerk reaction to their winning percentage. I think it was a knee-jerk reaction to their popularity percentage, because people weren't bothering with them, potentially, or they may, or it was really weird to see them change tier. It was interesting to see they were paying attention. I think that was a good thing. But I feel like tier 2, having a team in tier 2 from a tournament is more of an incentive to play it, so that the experienced teams don't just, I'm just going to play Dark Elves for the rest of my life. It's a case of like, right, actually, I've done Dark Elves. Let's see if I can achieve the same thing with Tomb Kings, because at tier 2, I'll get a few extra skills in this tournament, and that could be really fun.
I think that the tier 2 is probably the most controversial segment, I guess, because when you look at it, like if we were to go by the Games Workshop standard, by what it says in the book, the FAQ, what they're currently tiered at, when you're looking at the tier 1 teams, I would, without a doubt, say that those are probably the highest win percentage, most forgiving, strongest sort of teams. Well, I guess when we get into the tier 2, that's where it becomes a bit more granular, because you've got, like we said, like orcs or humans or whatever, which are relatively decent, and then maybe you've got Nurgle, which don't fare so well. And I guess this is where in tournaments it gets challenging. And I know that obviously Games Workshop have put their match play guide out, and I think that was great. The whole Megastar changes, and obviously that got implemented in a bunch of places as well. I'm not knocking the match play guide, because I thought it was a good little book. It was at a great price point as well.
I agree. I think it was a good
surprising for
good supplement.
Yeah, it was.
It wasn't needed, but it was a good thing to have out there.
Yeah, but I wonder whether or not in there they should have reevaluated the tiers for matched play, whether or not they could have expanded on it, or whether they should have mentioned something more around it. And we obviously run at our tournaments in line with the kind of Games Workshop standard, don't we?
Yeah.
And we've had, I don't know how many years it's been now. It's been a few, hasn't it? We've had our tiering packages based around that standard, and kind of off the back of this discussion, we were sort of talking about whether or not we'd want that to change. Now, I know that the World Cup, they had a more granular tiering system.
A lot of tournaments do, especially in like a well-established environment. They are very happy to add and add and add. I mean, the World Cup was an interesting one because it had 5 tiers, but within each tier there was 3 options. It was either 4 or 5 tiers, and each of them had 3 or 4 options. So it was a really interesting one. But for when you're playing the same team for 9 games, you kind of you got to have something that is quite interesting. But anyway, sorry, I cut you off there.
No. I mean, it's what I wanted to discuss is whether or not you guys think that the current Games Workshop tiering list is appropriate for a tournament, or whether or not you think the making it more granular has an advantage over that.
Ooh, what do you think, Trips?
So I like the current tiering system because I think it gives enough flexibility without making it too complicated. I think if you're going for a tiering system where you've got like 5 tiers, and particularly when you've got packages within it, it works for something like the World Cup where you've got basically a lot of very experienced players playing in it. I think if you make it too complex, it's almost a bit of a barrier to entrance. Can you imagine saying to a new player, come along to the tournament? Excellent. I want to take, what team do I want to take? Well, there's 5 different tiers of teams from 1 to 5 and different combinations of what you can take. You can see people go, tell me what to take. They're probably going to go, I'm not going to take a tier 1. I'll be in tier 2 or 3 straight off.
It's interesting. I think you're right. I think, and this is kind of where the discussion kind of stemmed from, was the kind of confusion around what that meant. What that meant to me is like as a hobbyist, like if I'm new, or I'm maybe even like new to tournaments or something, because there is a degree of like not just like financial cost to the hobby, but like your time and your interest, like emotional cost almost, because you tie yourself to a particular team, or you tie, and if you're in that and you're thinking, oh well, I've not got a chance of winning in a in a tournament with them, and you're feeling like, oh, I've got to go and do something else, that can feel overwhelming in a way.
That's kind of the benefit of League. Even though you play over a longer period of time, the teams tend to be less volatile because you tend to start at a closer point. Whereas tournament is a flash in a pan. The minimum you're going to get at a tournament is TV of I don't know, maybe the minimum TV would be basically 1150, 1200, including skills, right? Including the skills. So most tournaments are 1250, 1300, which for League is that's almost second season for a lot of teams. So you're kind of jumping in at second season. So it is always difficult. I mean, the best thing to do when going to a tournament is take a team you like to play, because the great thing about Blood Bowl is tier 1 can lose to tier 3 anytime. So there is that benefit. And if you go to a tournament and just play the team you want to play, then it's going to be fun. Your question around are the Games Workshop tiers right though, Milton, was a really interesting one. Because I've got prepping for monthly meta next month. So Mike Davies puts together this tableau covering all the NAF data from all the NAF games for tournaments, and looking at you probably can't see on the screen very well, but this is not built for this is how I film it normally, with magenta green screened out. So
it works. We can see it.
This is the back data. I've got the Games Workshop tier, and this is games all time with win percentage of Blood Bowl 2020. And generally speaking, they're not unbalanced. Lisbon and Norse are the only two that are actually below par, and
they surprise me.
But they're popular.
Lisbon and Norse, yeah. I guess if you're playing a lot,
they're popular ones.
Yeah.
And then you've got Tomb Kings and OWA, which are peaking, but again, they're both unpopular teams because they. Their Tomb Kings is yet to be updated, and OWA is entry, those both I think are probably two of the best, excluding vampires, examples of tier 2 teams that I'm going to run for a challenge, because I feel like I can get them cooking, and I think that's it. But otherwise, the blocking is good, with the exception of tier 3 spikiness, and I think we can accredit the Snotlings to Swarming and Hackflem, and Halflings to Griff or Morg. Otherwise,
and I think that's a big thing about the tiers, isn't it? That there's a tier of the team alone, but because of the nature of the tier and often the value of the lineman, to be honest, that's then changing the star availability for tournaments. So you almost have the inverse of it. Often on a tier 1 team, and we saw it in the Bonehead Championship. We saw vanilla team at tier 1, but you see all the tier 3 teams are full of stars and stacked with them because they can fit them in. So you do get a little bit of a different dynamic through that.
I don't entirely dislike the fact that like Snotlings are doing well as a result of having like a good start. Now, I wonder. Well, one of the questions I kind of wrote down is should stars be tiered? I mean, I know we've got the mega star kind of category now come in, and I'm well, initially I wasn't, but I'm now 100% on board with that. I think that's really good.
I do too.
But I wonder whether or not, I don't know whether it kind of shifts it too much, but if you had like tiering for stars almost, it's difficult because I guess the cost association is really supposed to be the tier, but then you're with the keywords giving so many teams access to different stars, and then it kind of changes it a little. But I wondered whether or not if you had like a tiering system where the stunties had slightly easier access to the higher tiered stars, whereas the tier 1 teams had slightly, so it kind of like polarized.
It's an interesting one, but if you look at the way that the mega stars normally impacts it, I think you'll see that that's mostly prevalent in tournament packs these days. So tier 3 tends to get more skills. The better stars tend to have that mega star tax probably of a couple of skills. So if you look at our beachhead rule set, tier 3 gets, I can't remember, 6 or 7 skills, but a megastar costs 2 of those skills. So that's kind of built in. As I think you're right, and I think we've never had that before. Well, that's not true. We've had it, but it has all been probably the most feudal point of Blood Bowl, to the point where the NAF weren't even allowing people to ban stars until the end of last year, or the beginning of this year. That you weren't allowed to ban a star, which caused misery everywhere because people were finding it's a difficult one. We never saw total misery due to stars in our tournaments, but that's because we kept our tournaments quite low TV to make them pretty accessible. You run a 1250 tournament, everybody's going to be able to afford a proper star. You bring, and why would you not take humans with Griff? Why would you not take well, you wouldn't probably take Skaven with Hack for them, but that's my point. Is actually there's no change for that. 1100, you can run a chainy Tomb King roster, but you're dropping 2 Tomb Guardians to make it happen, and I think that kind of adds to that tax. And it's interesting because having that tiered element of stars, I do think is really good, and it was quite funny to see everyone take one last hurrah for some of the most popular stars. But Milton, my other question to you is, what would you want Games Workshop to use to determine the tiers?
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? And I think actually, as we've been talking, I kind of maybe realised the value of what they've done a little bit more. But I almost wonder whether or not the Games Workshop tiers shouldn't be there.
Well, they never were until this edition, right?
No,
it's a really interesting one. Well,
I'm sat there thinking that perhaps they add more confusion than they do help. I think they would have been great if they were just in the matched play guide, and maybe not so much across the, from the beginning, because then you're more inclined to sort of look at the rules, study the rules, pick them up, maybe have conversation with the community. But on the flip side, then I guess, what Trips was kind of saying earlier, it's difficult. And there are definitely teams in there. Like, I'm looking at that, and I'm like attributing some of the game wins for halflings and snotlings to the stars or whatever. But Nurgle always sit quite low down. Nurgle are a particularly difficult team to play, and I would almost say they're the bottom T2, if not crawling into T3, right? On occasion, because you can see it from the statistics there. Because even with the star player axis, although Nurgle's star player axis isn't fantastic, is it?
I think they can take Hackflam.
No, of course they can take Hackflame, can't they? So yeah, I mean, let's face it. If you've got a Snotling team with Hackflame and you've got a Nurgle team with Hackflame, and the Snotling team are outdoing them every time, then Snotlings are obviously like better team, right? So it's like, Snotlings
I think are a really good example of what you're saying here. Where the tier structure, I love a bit of cognitive dissonance, that's described in the rulebook is not necessarily the same thing as tier. right? They should have given them classification of literally beginner, advanced, expert, or something like that, because your Snotlings are tier 3. They're a classification 3 team, but they outperform a tier 3 bracket. Because they are just a better team with great Edge 3+ and dodge everywhere. They're just wicked. Like, they're great. They're not super, but they're gonna you get a feeling, right? You play against halflings, you're like, oh sweet, I'm gonna get some SPP this game. You play against Snotlings, you're like, this is gonna be tough. And that's not something you really want to think. You play goblins, you're like, ooh, a couple of guys are gonna get fouled, but it's gonna be a win. You play ogres, it's gonna be a case of, I'm gonna get punched a few times, but it's probably going to be a win. And halflings, generally speaking, as soon as I've taken Griff off the board, it's going to be a win. The Snotlings, you're like, they're probably going to bring Hack, Flareman, Bomber, and they're going to have 79 Snotlings, and this is going to be uphill, or it's just going to be a constant battle.
Push the Snotling.
Yeah, and I think that's it. Is that there's a stunty team, there's a beginner team, there's an advanced team, and then there's tier based on win rate. And then you've got to consider what you're trying to use tiers to accomplish. Is it balance or is it incentive? I would rather have incentive than balance, because games do not need to be balanced to be fun. And there will always be the best team, and there will always be the worst team, and there will always be that team. Orcs are a cracking example of this. Yes, they're tier 2 now, but somebody's got to be the best tier 2 team, and I would rather have it be Orcs, because I'd rather see more Orcs being played than forgotten about. So, there's always going to be that team at the bottom of tier 1, which is, I'll tell you what, we've got the graphic up here, Norse. Do I think Norse should be bumped down to tier 2? No, I don't. Do I think Tomb King should be bumped up to tier 1? No. I mean, they may get revamped. Do we want OWA bumped up to tier 1? No, we want OWA to be incentivized because they've got the second lowest amount of games.
Yeah, those teams that are at the bottom of the tier or the top of the tier, I think those are the ones where the coach makes a big difference.
Yes.
Because there's a lot of people like playing Norse, but they can be quite tricky to play because of the way they play in the detail. The same with OWA. They've got a unique set of skills, and some of them aren't all great.
Good luck.
And so there is definitely, you almost get the influence there of the teams at the bottom of tier 1 can be quite tricky to play. Tombkins are a really good example. They are a tier 2 team, but you play a really good tier 2 Tombkins coach, and it is going to be a miserable game of,
because they're going to box you.
Another Tomb Guard there.
And also, where Tomb Kings haven't changed at all for 15 years, at all. They've not changed at all. Like, the costings haven't changed, the skills haven't changed. They've got a passing stat now, but that doesn't matter at all. It's the same team as it was 10 years ago. So those Tomb Kings teams are just like, lol. It's basically how I felt when I brought Skaven into this edition, because I was like, so Skaven are the same, but my thrower is now better. Actually, that's not fair. My gutters used to be my throwers. But my point is, my game plan is the same. And Tomb Kings, the game plan is the same. So you got that little bit of experience carrying over.
I think you're right there, Trips. I think, also, if you think about it, if a player comes in and they pick a tier 1 team and they're like, oh, I've played this for a while now, I've got more experience. I'd like the challenge. And then they go off to play Snotlings because they think that'll be fun. Well, they're a bit more experienced now, so they're more likely to win as a result of it. I wonder how much that actually impacts.
I think Goonhammer did an article about that. I never got a chance to really read it, where they basically took the data and got rid of coaches that were let's say advanced
lower
coaches,
ranked,
or lower ranked, to see what that is. But I mean, I work with data every single day, and I know that data can be misread, mislabeled, misused, and more often than not, entirely ignored. So you kind of get two classifications of people: one who love the data, see the data, and can interpret it in a multitude of ways that can either prove their argument or disprove their argument. or there's a whole other batch that just don't know the data's there and aren't particularly interested, or interested from a centralized point of view. And this is something else I wanted to get you guys' thoughts on, is Games Workshop have had a cultural change over the last, I don't know, maybe 10 years, right? They moved away from here's rules for stuff, we don't make the models, so go figure it out. They moved away from that to, if we have rules, there will be a model. And that is the same for Blood Bowl as it is. So they have this encompassing view that actually the only way to play is to go to Games Workshop, and that's your starting point. And I get this. Like, the starting point for our customers is a Games Workshop store, the Games Workshop website, and the Games Workshop books. Because quite frankly, it's a Games Workshop game. If I started playing Pokemon and like my resources were from a different game, it would be very peculiar. And actually, if you look at it from a Games Workshop point of view, they're like, well, we want people to play a game. We want people to be able to access the game. So that's why I think the match played thing came out. Excuse me. And that's why the tiers are there, even though there should be classifications in the rulebook, so that they can get people to come into the game, read the stuff from Games Workshop, and then when they step outside the door, when they go to the local WI and have a tournament, they're better versed. Because historically, you played Blood Bowl because you knew a guy who could get you a team. Like, and that was a real thing for a decade, and it was very, very, very cool. But that's not how it is anymore. You go to a Games Workshop, you see a Snotling team, and you go, well, it's November, I've nearly made it a whole year, why wouldn't I throw it away now at the last moment and buy a team? And they want to keep it all together. Whereas you've got this, probably a really interesting, like the difference between Blood Bowl and 40k and Age of Sigmar is they do the meta watches, because they control the meta, they control the community, they lead, and it's because they changed the rules so much that the community's got no chance of having any kind of internal balance. Whereas Blood Bowl has been quite static for a long time, and they've got we all know that the Orc team's changed a little bit, but it's only changed a little bit, and for the last 12 years it's been this good, so probably just a little bit less good now. Whereas like in Age of Sigmar and 40k, they've got all these extra rules, and your special rule changes, and then the way the special rule interacts changes, and then there's that phase doesn't exist anymore, and it changes the game. Whereas Blood Bowl, the game doesn't really change. It's just stuff inside it. So we've got this existing community who've been doing their own tiers, doing their own rule sets for ages. And I think this is a really good step from Games Workshop to get people who are just starting to kind of cogitate it. But I think you are right, Milton. It can be confusing because that tier element doesn't necessarily mean the same thing, but it's not far off. And I know this winds Blood Tithe Ben off a treat, because I'm the kind of guy, I'm like, boom, you know what? We get a 7 or 8 out of 10. That's wicked.
Yeah.
But there are always those people that are like, yeah, but you can tune it. You can get it to 9. You can get it to 10. And I'm like, 7 or 8 out of 10 for everybody. That's brilliant. Like, that's a great place to be. And this is that first step of like, let's get people. This is getting people out of leagues to ask the question, and they go to a tournament and they get, oh, I've got a tier, yeah, no, my tier, and that's better than it have ever been before, because I think that's positive.
And it is definitely the teams at that crossover point that generate the discussion, because the teams that are absolutely at the top of tier 1, nobody's arguing they shouldn't be tier 1. The teams that are at the bottom of tier 3, nobody's arguing about those. It's your tier 2 teams who...
It's the outperformers, right?
Yeah.
Like the Tomb Kings and OWA are overperforming. Your Snotlings are overperforming. Your Black Orcs, Chaos and Nurgle are underperforming. All right, well, someone's got to overperform. Someone's got to underperform.
I gotta say, I'm halfway between each camps. There's a little bit of Blood Tithe. Like I get that. I get that desire to kind of fine tune it, and I do get, that you're looking for like the wider appeal. 100%. I think you're right. I think that the tier classifications in the rulebook would be far better if they were just beginner, advanced, whatever. How do Games Workshop approach 40k in terms of the meta, in terms of the rules, in terms of do they tier?
I don't think there's tiering in those games.
There's no
No,
tiering.
they kind of,
they nerf the pointing.
which
They
is
nerfed
which
the
is
rules. They changed the
which-
rules. This would be
which
like
is
saying
why-
dwarves are winning too much. Let's get rid of tackle.
which is why I was going to say it was kind of weird for them to tier a game, because if the rules are revolving and changing, and I know they've put the FAQ out and done that, it was just a little bit odd. But I go back to what you said about the statistics, and the statistics that you've got up there is really interesting, because there are 100 ways to interpret this. And one of the questions I asked earlier was to myself was, if you were to take away the tiering, so if you were to run 1,000 tournaments where there was no tiering, everyone just got the same skill package,
And use that as a baseline.
would it actually make any difference to this outcome? Because Blood Bowl has so many random elements in it. I wonder if the statistics there, which I'm assuming are present with star players, with tier packages, with various different tournaments.
Yeah, this is everything mixed in.
Right, exactly. So if there's just everything mixed in, and there may even be a tournament or two in there which doesn't have tiering, or
Oh yeah,
has some
definitely.
other kind of like thing. But I wonder, like, overall, how much that would change.
I
I
don't
think
think
that
it,
would be
I think it
really
would-
interesting to find out.
I think it would make it potentially more stark in the tier 2 teams that are incentivized and therefore get a little bit more bunts than the tier 3. I think you'd probably get a grouping that is closer to the Games Workshop tiering.
Right. So is it the tournament meta that therefore changes the statistic away from what Games Workshop have actually put down? Is it the way that the tournaments are structured as a result of what they've given that is therefore skewing the data? Because if you just left it alone, it would actually pan out as the way you were expecting it.
Do you know what? Potentially.
Okay. Here's another thing. So, and we'll go back to what we were kind of questioning, was whether or not we should change tiers
Yes.
for our tournaments.
Yes.
Okay. Now this is a really big one for me, because
Well, Beachhead is locked in. So if you're listening and coming to Beachhead, that the rules are locked in for that. We're talking about the future for that.
we're done with that. But our tournaments are a little bit different. There's a lot of tournaments out there a little bit different, right? So we've got Beachhead, which has the Fen Beast. Okay, so we run a Fen Beast star player. For those of you that don't know, he has some cool stats. I can't remember off the top of my head, but obviously that's a different player to the standard format, which can come into play, and therefore, you know, it's another potential big guy at a relatively reasonable price point. People love to take the Fen Beast. We encourage them taking the Fen Beast, and therefore you get slightly different rosters.
Yeah, definitely.
As a result of that. That skews it. And so then we've got Sevens on the same weekend, which is similar, which also includes the Fen Beast, which would change the Sevens format. We've got Dorset Dungeon Bowl, which is
Dungeon Bowl.
well, yeah, but the first year it was 1 ball, and then this year, did you run the 3 ball?
No, second year was 1 ball as well. We wanted to run it. First year was like Dungeon Ball's here, let's play Dungeon Ball. The second year was let's play Dungeon Ball again, and then we all agreed that the right thing to do is to change it to a 3 ball format.
Okay, right. So the next time we're going to run this, it's likely to be a 3 ball format. That's going to change the meta up from potentially the Games Workshop rules. We've yet to discuss the summer, but come Bonehead Bowl, I mean, Bonehead Bowl's on a whole nother level, right?
There is no meta for Bonehead Bowl.
Exactly, but what I'm trying to get at is ultimately these are like game systems within the game system, and so how do you determine? I mean, obviously we'd have to run loads of tournaments, and we only host one of each a year, and we've got a few years worth of data, but we've fine-tuned those and we've changed a few things up, not massively. It's coming like really into line now. And we could go back and overlook at that data, but we might not have a broad enough data set to determine how we would want to tier for that particular meta. So what do we draw upon in order to make that determination when we have these sort of extra variables? What do you guys think about that?
And that brings back to the point of, are you aiming to use tiering as a balancing factor or as an incentive? Because you've got two great columns here, win percentage and games played, and you can rank them by one or t'other. And depending on what you want to achieve, you can influence that. And I think it might be time to potentially move away from using win percentage as an incentive for your tiering and move it to a case of, do you know what, we've seen in tournaments this year that no one's really bringing Chaos or Nurgle, so let's give them a better package and see if people want to play them. Everybody's playing Dark Elves and Underworld, so do you know what, let's tier 0 them and give them one skill, and let's just punish them. And that is within our scope. But I have to jump in with a thing. So I'm an ex-Magic player. I love, generally as a human, centralization. It's part of who I am, and I grew up watching Star Trek, so come on, let's go Federation. But Blood Bowl, the beautiful thing about Blood Bowl is that the world, the universe, is incredibly and spectacularly unique. Every one of the events, there is no, not anymore since the NAF was abolished, there is no centralized Blood Bowl thing. So you go and you play in this Blood Bowl tournament, they might have different rules than if you play in this Blood Bowl tournament. You play in this league, and that is the most incredible thing about the Blood Bowl world. And that was put in there by Games Workshop to represent how tabletop actually works. And because of that, almost you don't really get, there is no vanilla Blood Bowl tournament. Like, there isn't. Like, you go to this tournament, you got this special stuff going on. You go to this tournament, you got this special stuff. A tournament is an event in the Blood Bowl world, and you see it mirrored on the tabletop, whether you've got one of the big ones from up north, where they've got their special characters, whether you whatever you're doing, there is always a twist, and that lack of a standard of format, I think, is what Games Workshop were trying to achieve. And if anybody can run a standard format, it's got to be, I believe, owned and controlled by Games Workshop, because the rest of us are going to do something feudal because that's what the law tells us to do. And we think, what are you going to do? You're going to come to a tournament that is just the same team you've played repeatedly, or you're going to come to this tournament where these teams have got a bit of a boost, there's this extra twist, and it's more of a unique play experience because I'm bringing my team today to this event. I don't know who I'm going to play, but this game is going to be different, and it is this one competition. And you see it in the NFL as well. You see it in all sports, because every game is its own macrocosm. Every game is unique and different, and things happen. And that's the beautiful thing about Blood Bowl, is every season, every tournament should be its own special, unique snowflake, because there is no standardized format. And if there was a standardized format, Games Workshop would have to own and control that. And I'd be fine with that. But they have to incentivize playing that, because if I'm going to run a tournament, I want it to have a fun twist. Because standard Blood Bowl is awesome, but why not do your thing?
Yeah, 100%. And actually, I think one of the reasons I love Bonehead Bowl so much is because that list right there, scrunch it up, throw it out the door. It means literally nothing. Nobody has a clue what's going on. And everyone's going, oh, well, I brewed up like 57 rosters because like nothing makes any sense. Like, there's no, like, obviously I can pick 2 tier 1 teams, but this year we had Stunty Champ, and
yeah, which was amazing.
Might have been because of the stars, but Drew came in with his orc
tier 1 full stars,
snotling. Like,
to be fair, he got up against Dalio running an equally powerful list in round 1, and I think that stymied it. But I think when we were talking about balance versus incentive, I think you can also play that the kind of the other way. Is this tournament a competition or an event? And I feel like you kind of got a 4-box model here of Blood Bowl, where is it a competitive, balanced format that you're looking for, or is it an incentive event? And Bonehead Bowl, I think, would sit very much in the incentive event, whereas the World Cup potentially was a balanced competition.
But I think that's where the little bit of vagary around what are the tiers and how they work and the detail actually gives tournament organisers that bit of creative space. There are a lot of Blood Bowl tournaments, and as BT has tried very hard over the last few months, you can pretty much go to one every weekend and take a different team in a different format and work it through. But having that slight difference means that if you go to 6 tournaments, you're not going to go, I've done a roster and it will be done for the year. There'll always be a slight tweak, and there'll be a slightly different set of opponents there in detail. And there's that tournament twist on it without them having to all be so unique that they've got their own whole meta and personality like Bonehead Bowl has got. Because actually, if they were all like that, we'd all be running out of hair and roster checkers would be going mad. But they've all got their slight own tweak. And I really like the fact that it's not so locked down. And I think, as you said, Ben, there's the tiering system enables you to have that variation. If there was a really tight competitive format and a seasonal format or something like that, that would have to be owned in detail. But I think Blood Bowl lives really well in that space of there is no one meta.
And there's also a nice little twist on this. This data is about wins of games, which is fantastic. But every tournament tends to score a little bit differently as well. So you may be incentivized to run elves because you get a bonus point for each completed pass. You get more bonuses for casualties than touchdowns. Well, then I'm going to run my Nurgle and a chainsaw, and I'm just going to casualty. And you get that incentive as well. So you've got your tier, your cost, your balance, and then you've got the why as well, because it's not going to be about just winning. It will be about how you win based on the event. And God, some events have got like plots and things where you've got like extra bonus victory points for doing stuff, which I think is wicked. But again, will incentivize running a different team and a different build that may be potentially subpar.
Yeah, and I think that data is the best data we've got for how teams perform in detail. But even then, there is so much variance, as we said, in what happens. It's only a certain set of players. It's only a certain set of tournaments. It's not got the balance factors built into it. So it is indicatively there to help, but it shows that there isn't a right answer. There isn't a wrong answer. There isn't a good team. There isn't a bad team. I think Milton said it earlier today. You could have the best team filled of all the best stars in the world, and if I come along and touch your dice and you just roll ones all day, you're going to lose every game of the tournament and you'll be done by midday.
I think, actually talking this out has been great because it's kind of cleared my head on it enormously. And I think actually what I've concluded from this conversation is that the word tier is the point of contention.
Although the Games Workshop tiers are pretty, they mirror.
Don't get me wrong, and I really like your suggestion about the fact that perhaps they shouldn't have done that. That they should have been more along the lines of beginner, advanced, or whatever. Because
beginner,
I think there's
crazy.
There's two, exactly. There's two kind of schools of thought of coming into the tier thing, isn't there? And Games Workshop has laid that down. Okay, so that's just the way it is. It is what it is now. But when you're looking at that tier data for a tournament, tier is precisely what you want it to be for the event. And looking at all that data, I'm just looking at it and thinking now, it's just nonsense. Because it doesn't, it has given you a kind of relatively clear picture of where it is, but you're right. The scoring, there's just too many variables. And the more I think about it, the scoring being out, the packages being out, the stars being restricted or not restricted,
the special weather rules,
all those other factors. It's very difficult to tie that to a particular tier. So I'm going to pose you guys a question. All right. What advice would you give to a new player who's come up to you and said, what are these tier things? What should I do? What should I get? How should I approach this? how would you now advise them as to where to go with that?
So for me, for a new player, I would always say, if you're a new player, don't look at a tier 3 team, because they're a bit more complicated, and you also there'll be some soul crushing moments. I'd say look at tier 1 or 2 and find a team that you like and you like the look and feel of, and go there.
I think this is a pretty good starting point. Now, what we do on the podcast generally is, if you consider people's knowledge on a scale of 1 to 5, we try our hardest to accelerate you to 3, point you the direction to learn 4, and then let you work your way up to 5. And I think if you want to get somebody on board with being aware, then the team tiers from the book is pretty fair. Tier 1, they do a lot of stuff well. Tier 2, they do some stuff well. Tier 3, they do no stuff well. It is probably a really good point, but the great thing about the game is that any team can beat any other team, and it really depends whether you're playing tournament or league. I think because league, you've got more time to experience things and work with other coaches to learn lessons. If you're going straight for a tournament, you have to decide what it is you want to do in that tournament. Are you going to win? In which case, look at tier 1, because they've got the best tools to start. If you're looking to learn a team, pick the team you want to learn and run a tournament. I think that would be my steering.
Interesting. No, I get the angle that both of you have got. I think from this conversation, my stance on it has changed. I think before I'd kind of gone down a similar sort of line, and maybe even sort of pushed towards the sort of what Games Workshop's got there as sort of tier 1, and it's a bit more forgiving. But now, you know what? Just thinking about it, I think my advice would just be ignore it, pick what you want, and just embrace the chaos. Because I think that is what Blood Bowl is about, and I think that's kind of what we've just discussed. Every event's unique, every league is unique, every game is unique. And I was talking to Craig about this the other day. I was like,
bet you were. Craig is the biggest net decker of all time.
No, but it was actually quite an interesting conversation, because he was sort of saying about how he's kind of come back into playing Blood Bowl after having a bit of a hiatus, and I was sort of saying to him, I was like, yeah, but winning isn't necessarily, in league in particular, obviously in a tournament that's massively different, don't listen to this advice, but winning isn't everything in a league game.
Milton, I'm going to stop you. Do not go too deep into that topic, because that is on the list of topics I'm going to bring up on Saturday, because
foreshadowing.
I think that is, and after playing some vampire games, I think there's some space that we need to explore there for league.
Yeah.
You are, and Trips running Corn, you've been running OWA, Milt. Sometimes in a league game, it's better to do stupid stuff for the SBP than it is to play for the win.
But even so okay, and say you're not going to play a league and you're just going to play tournaments, I still think you have space to pick any of those teams and do well. And it might be a little bit of a harder entry barrier, but if you love Nurgle, if you've played Death Guard in 40k, and you've played putrid rot thingies or whatever they are called now in AOS, and you just love that aesthetic or whatever, and you're like, I want to play Blood Bowl and I want to play Nurgle because I love Nurgle, and you've got people coming going, oh, well, you know, it's a difficult team or whatever.
Right? At the Aegeus, I think, was it Daryl who ended up playing Nurgle on both days and was in like the top 15, top 20 coaches.
Yeah, right. I just think, just if that's what you really like, maybe give some friendly advice if you've been playing for a while, to just say, look, you know, that's going to be
tough.
It's going to be tough, but ride it out, because the reward will be worth it. And if you really like that, just embrace it and do it. I cannot wait for us to talk about what you said, and I think this is going to be brilliant, about
constructive losing.
No, about the way that potentially tiering it based on
incentive.
Popularity. Yeah. To incentivize people to play more of a particular team, to see some more variety, maybe get some more of those games played, maybe see some more OWA or whatever, I think we could do some stuff. And we've all agreed that nobody's allowed to run Underworld, right?
It's kind of it. So Milton, the other thing that you've got the Games Workshop 3-tier system. The question is that enough tiers? Because you see a lot of, I mean, the World Cup is a cracking example of this, where they had 5 tiers. And I think actually, if you start with the 3-tier method, you can tier 0 some stuff, and then you can tier 2.5, and you kind of decentivize the top performing teams, incentivize the bottom performing teams of tier 2, and that kind of achieves what you want to achieve. And I bet if we run the data on the actual games played, it will those would be the teams you'd want to kind of incentivize. So Vampires, Slan, Old World, Nurgle, Elven Union. In High Elves is an interesting one.
Well, we don't see an awful lot of any of those.
No,
like if I go back and look at all of our
there's maybe one. There's maybe like, I don't know, out of 50 coaches, you probably get 3 of these teams.
But then you've got other factors into it. So High Elves have been very difficult to get a team for until recently, and printers have come around. It's been difficult to run a High Elves team because
I'll be honest though, with Blood Bowl players, if there's a will, there's a way. Like, we see some fantastic conversions,
That's
and
true,
we see
but it's that easy, because there's a lot of people who go to a tournament and they're like, oh damn, I don't actually, like, I'll go to this tournament, and then they forget about it. You know who you are, Stephen. Or you go, I'm gonna build my High Elf team. And then you're like, do you know what? My life happened and I ran out of time to try and scratch build a High Elf team, so I'll just take Skaven instead, because I've got that. Because I can buy a box. But all the top amount of teams played, I don't think they're the ones you really want to incentivize. Lizards, Undead, Skaven, Dark Elves, Dwarves, Underworld. None of them need.
It's fascinating that the Lizards were so low down on the win percentage.
Actually.
I mean, they're such a great team. That's really thrown me. But I guess because of the amount played, maybe they are definitely a really popular pick for new coaches.
I was going to say. I think it's then a new pick for a lot of new coaches who go, you've got big guys and you've got little guys that can dodge through gaps, so surely it'll all go fine. And it goes, well, it does, until you run into someone else who goes, I'm not going to let you do that, and I'm going to smack your Sauruses.
They are the most balanced team in Blood Bowl, with the exception of Norse. Norse a 49.85% win rate. Lizards a 50.18% win rate.
Wow,
that's perfection. Like, that is absolute perfection. I believe that they are being tiered appropriately.
But as we discussed, based on...
that was bait. That was absolute bait.
That was 100%. I mean, they are, in a way. I could almost see that, to be perfectly honest. And as I kind of discussed in the hobby section earlier, like Lizards, I always find really challenging because they have potentially 6 strength 4 pieces, a big guy, and they've also got the speed, the edge. They've got the bash, they've got the dash, and they've got that sort of in between. They've got a little bit of the stunty going on as well. They have a little bit of everything, so I could see them being pretty balanced. They are,
but they're also easy to take out. And when it comes to a tournament format, you tend to have a toolkit player in a tournament format who's got tackle, who's got mighty blow, whose sole purpose is star player hunting. Star player hunters are real good at killing gutters and skinks because they're just toolkitted. You get Cheney. Cheney's going to wipe. And actually that can cause a Lizardman team who are very expensive. You're talking about having 6 strength 4 pieces, 1 strength 5 pieces. Not at $1 million, you're not. That's 1150 territory, right? Top, like, and so there's no stars. So you're running 1150. You've got 5 skinks. Can you box 2 and then take out 3? Yes, probably. And then what are you going to do? Like, that Crocs is not scoring a touchdown.
No,
very often.
No. Okay, I have a question. So we have a potential 4th slot for a tournament, or 5th if you count the 7s for the beachhead for the summer. And we're looking at what to do in that. Now, having spoken about the tiering and how each event is unique and how each event has its own kind of meta, I would really like to know how people feel about playing a tournament with a really unique twist to it, something that's completely different, like Bonehead Bowl, and there's loads of different tournaments out there. You know, Rob's got Sand Bowl, where it's you have to bring a star. It can be part of your 11. That changes it up. Whether there is a huge preference towards that individuality, or whether there is a preference towards a more standard format.
From me and Trips, or from
both of you guys and from the audience? I'd like to see some comments on the on this pod, see what people think, because I think that feedback would be really valuable for us, and I would be really interested to see just generally kind of what the community feel about that.
You're right, we got the opportunity to lean into it one way or the other. We can make it sassy and spicy and unique, or we can lean into just making it one of the best run standardized format tournaments, you know, summer standard, boom. And we got a format and we can run it using the Games Workshop rules to give it it's interesting. I see a benefit in both of them. And the good thing is, because like you said, our calendar is full of interesting things, we have the potential to make an uninteresting thing the interesting thing. So people want to play the mixed teams, they do that one. If they want to play Dungeon Ball, they do that one. If they want to play 7s, they do that one. If they want to play a big 11s tournament with a special star, they do that one. If you want to play vanilla Games Workshop, you play the summer one potentially. It's all good. And the good thing about Blood Bowl is no matter how much the format's changing, it's not going to stop the game from being enjoyable, which is just phenomenal. I mean, the only thing I would say is if you potentially encourage star player usage at the moment with the wear of stars, that's the only thing that I think is a bit unpalatable for some people. But I mean, hell, I'd be up for a tournament with no tiering. Although I think it's a miss. I think it's a miss. I think if there's no tiering, you go with the teams that are better off because it's more fun. But you add tiering and incentive, then you've got the opportunity for doing like, right, I could run Skaven, or I could run Necro, and I've got skills to make it as interesting as Skaven.
Unless there's some like overwhelming feedback where everyone's like, no, we're desperate for the no tier tournament. I'm like way too excited to discuss about the incentivizing.
Yeah, I think it's wicked. Milton, I think that is a proper juicy topic. I know there's a couple of bits on the list that we didn't get to, but hey, we can always bring it back, because I think we're going to have a lot of feedback on this one, and I hope so, because it's good to chat about. Like, this is a really good topic. So, like Milton said, do let us know in the comments what your thoughts are on tiering, because we haven't discussed the most extreme versions, and there's loads of tournaments out there that do things differently. You know, there's the one that gave me the most headache was like the Danish one, I think, where they had gold bars and you could use a gold bar and trade it for a packet of cigarettes to get you out of jail, which I can assume you know all about. Milton, any last thoughts on that one? I just want to stop the rumours before that's not where Ben is. He got caught smuggling in AK white ink.
Yeah.
No.
We're going to be calling the summer one Slammer Showdown or something, aren't we?
Ooh, I don't know. See, that's a good theme.
Yeah.
Everybody gets a shiv at the beginning of the round.
Jailbreak Bowl. Yeah.
Right. Anyway, before we say anything else incriminating, awesome stuff. Thank you guys very much. Was there any last thoughts before we did wrap up for the evening?
No, I'm good.
Absolutely fantastic. Well, thank you very much for joining and hanging out and talking Blood Bowl, guys. It's always a pleasure. I look forward to seeing you both on Saturday, because I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I really want to get your feedback on the studio because we can get this cooking, and I'm excited to start doing stuff. And I think I'm hoping that if you're listening, you will be excited for it too. So thank you very much, guys. We're going to wrap up. We'll be back soon with more Blood Bowl content. Happy shivving. Thanks so much for watching. We really appreciate your support. If you want to support the channel even further, please like and subscribe. It really does help us out. Or come join us on YouTube Members or in Patreon, where you can get exclusive access to some content, some loot, early access to basically everything we do, as well as regular competitions. Or you can pick up some Bonehead Podcast loot either on our website at boneheadpodcast.com. We've got the Dungeon Bowl things, we've got tokens and stuff like that, or on our Spreadshirt site as well. Everything you do just helps us make more content and hopefully do it of better quality. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. Happy blocking.